Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give people a few more minutes to join. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Just going to give people a few more minutes to join. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Rosen. I'm an AVP for Real Estate Development and Planning here at Empire State Development in the Real Estate Department. Thank you for joining this webinar. This is to talk about the Real Estate Development and Planning Consultant RFQ that's been issued by Empire State Development, which is New York State Economic Development arm. The RFQ was issued on the 24th, and this is just an opportunity to hear a little bit about it, a little bit about the work that ESD uses consultants for. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A that you can ask questions, and they'll be read aloud by our staff, and we'll try to answer what we can related to the work that ESD does. If you have questions about the procurement specifically, like about a form or deadlines or something, you should send that to RE prequal RFQ at esd.ny.gov. That email address is in the RFQ that's posted on the website. So you should be able to access that and see how to email if you have questions. So as I said, I'm going to go through the presentation, talk a little bit about the procurement process, then talk a little bit about the work that ESD does, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So just a little overview about ESD. Like I said, I'm with the Real Estate Development and Planning Department. We create housing and economic development opportunities through redevelopment of state-owned sites. We utilize consultants to help us with this, both for pre-development planning and compliance during development. So we do this RFQ, request for qualifications, to identify firms every 4 years. And we're looking for certain practice areas and locations in New York State. And doing this RFQ allows us to create this list of pre-qualified consultants. And ultimately, it makes it easier for us to do these mini bids when we are looking for consultants, rather than doing, a full RFP to, just put it out there. We already have firms that we've received submissions through this RFQ. Let's say we're looking for a financial advisor firm. We already have this list of firms that have kind of been pre-qualified by staff, and we're able to send the bid out to those firms. And it's just an easier process, and gives us more security and allows us to kind of expedite the process a little bit. So when we're sending those bids out to firms on that pre-qualified list, We'll look at what practice areas you're serving. You know, what if we're looking for surveyors, obviously we're looking for firms that do surveying, what locations you serve, what your fee schedules are, and the relevant experience and capabilities of your firm. And especially examples of performing similar work, you know, beforehand. So we send solicitations out to a number of firms on our list, including at least one woman-owned or minority-owned business enterprise, an MWBE, and a service-disabled veteran-owned business enterprise, SDVOB, if they are pre-qualified and on the list. So these are just some key dates and contact info. And again, this is all on the RFQ that's posted on our website. Like I said, the request went out on the 24th. We're having questions due Friday by 5 p.m. So if you have questions about the procurement, please send them to that email address. You can see it on the bottom of the screen. Or if you have questions about the work, you can also email those. You don't have to say them here in the chat. So the CSC is going to answer those questions on March 28th, and proposals are due on Friday, April 28th by 5 p.m. Sorry, I'm finding that, oh, okay, never mind, sorry. So we'll take all your questions in, you know, prepare answers, and then we're going to post the Q&A, like I said, on the website on March 28th, and that's for everyone to see. And the reason is really we don't want one firm to know answers to questions and not others. So that's why we say use that email address. So that way we have a recorded document that has all the questions that have been asked. And then the answers are available to everyone. So no one, you know, has knowledge that another firm doesn't, you know, it keeps it fair. So once we get all these submissions from firms, we will review and, you know, create a list based on our scoring, which I'll talk about in a little bit. That list will be adopted, hopefully, by the board approximately summer 2025. And the new list will go live in October, which is when the old list expires. And the list is good for 4 years. So as I mentioned, all communication sent to this email address. That's very important. You know, if you call me, I can't answer questions about the procurement because that would mean that someone is getting information from me that other firms aren't getting, as I said. So please use that email address. So these are the practice areas that we're looking for from consultants. They have demonstrated experience in one or more of these 15 different practice areas. And I would just note that if you've been on our list before, we did expand the number of practice areas a little bit and change the categories slightly. So just make sure to look, you know, if your firm offers, you know, cost estimating services, but you weren't on, hadn't submitted for something like that before, just make sure you're looking at the new categories to ensure that, you know, what you're offering meets what we're looking for. And again, these categories were developed by staff because when we're doing those projects, these are the categories where we're going to be looking for services, where we're going to be sending out those mini bids. So here's a regional map of New York State, and you have an Appendix B that has, you know, all the regions and asks you to identify where you perform your services. You're not required to perform services in all regions, all counties within a region. So for example, if you provide financial advisory services in Broome County, you serve the Southern Tier, even if you don't provide services in all counties in the Southern Tier. You also don't have to have the same services in every area. So for example, like if you do energy and sustainability for NYC, but you actually do historic and preservation for NYC and Long Island and maybe another area, that's fine. We're just looking for each of your practice areas, what regions that you serve. So when we go out again for those mini bids, we have an accurate list. So this is what we're looking at when we do receive the submissions. We're looking for your relevant experience in the practice areas. You know, if you say that your firm does surveying, you should have a lot of experience doing surveying that you have to present to us. Qualifications and experience of staff, you know, that includes work that you've done in the past, as well as, you know, if you're in any industry organizations, things like that. Your anticipated cost of services. So you'll see the Appendix A, I believe, has the fee schedule and overall organization and complete list of proposal. We want to make sure you understand what we're looking for. You've addressed everything in the RFQ. And, you know, understand what we're asking. And then quantitative factors, that's if your firm is an MWBE or SDVOB. So as I mentioned in the cost of services, your fee proposal, Appendix A, should show the cost per hour per staff member for each practice area. And we're going to rely on that, when we issue mini bids. If, let's say we're looking for surveying services and you listed your surveyor as getting X dollars per hour, if we do a mini bid and we ask you to respond to that, your total cost for that mini bid should relate to what your costs were in your submission to this RFQ. It should match. So we're looking for that consistency. Let's see. So the proposer mini bid submission. So this is assuming you get on the list, the RFQ list that we're creating with this RFQ and adopting and having this pre-qualified list of consultants. For most mini bids, these are the type of questions that you would be asked. And I just show you so that, you're going to be able to understand, if you're submitting to this RFQ and you're getting on this pre-qualified list, these are the types of things that you'll be asked when those mini bids go out. And similar, we want to know the firm and the team members, similar projects that you've done, proposal describing your approach to performing the scope of work, like milestones, timelines, things like that. We want to see biographies of the team members and those hourly rates. And like I said, that should match your cost proposals that you're submitting with this RFQ. As well, if you are responding to a mini bid, you'll be asked to submit a plan identifying subcontracting opportunities with a description of how you'll meet the MWBE and SDVOB goals. Those are assigned by the Office of Contractor and Supplier Diversity on a project-by-project basis. And I will say, because I think we got this question a lot last time, for this RFQ, for responding to this request for qualifications for consultants, you are not submitting a team. You are not submitting yourself and your subs for how you'd respond. You are only submitting your firm. If your firm is qualified for, let's say, cost estimating, and when you do get a cost estimating mini bid sent to you, you want to add members of a team, subcontract to another firm to assist you, you can mention that at that point. But for this RFQ, you are not submitting as a team. You're only submitting your individual firm. So I'll go through some examples of projects that the Empire State Development is working on and how we've used consultants to assist us in doing these projects. So this is Site K. It's on the west side of Manhattan. In 2023, ESD issued an RFP for the development of this site, and we received 7 proposals. We issued a mini bid to a selection of firms from the pre-qualified list for financial advisory firms to provide bid leveling tools to analyze and compare the bids. So the scope of work included creation of those bid leveling tools to ensure the submissions were comparable across different structures. We wanted to make sure we were doing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. Evaluating the proposal's financial components to ensure the scoring is rational. Analysis of market comparables for each proposed use, like residential, retail, condo, hotel, community facility, etc. The consultant was asked to attend meetings and calls with ESD and other public agencies as needed to weigh in, and then just overall evaluation support. So here's another example project, the Creedmoor Master Plan Development, and this was for Creedmoor Psychiatric Center, which is in Queens. So ESD plans to redevelop approximately 58 acres of underutilized land on this campus. We issued a mini bid to an architecture and urban planning consultants on the pre-qualified list to assist us with site planning and identifying potential site uses and development phasing. This is a very large site, so we wanted that consultant to help us kind of do that site planning and identify uses, because again, it's such a large site, you could do a lot with it. So the scope of work included reviewing design and planning work that had previously been done for the site, compiling and illustrating all the easements and utilities and other relevant site constraints, identify nearby zoning and transportation, demographic data, neighborhood character, other relevant planning considerations, coordinating with OMH and OPWDD since they operate on the site, as well as with local stakeholders to explore those uses, make sure the site balances the needs of the community and the development feasibility. Also coordinate with local agencies to plan for roads and other infrastructure, work with ESC real estate team to create potential site plans that balance, the state's priorities, including land use, financial constraints, as well as those community priorities. And the deliverable ultimately was a site plan with proposed development phases, uses, densities, building envelopes, and potential public realm improvements. So our next example, Lincoln Correctional Facility SECRA assignment. So this is Lincoln Correction Facility in Harlem. In March of 2023, ESG issued an RFP to redevelop the former Lincoln Correctional Facility site. The facility will be demolished in order to develop a mixed-use building with 105 residential units and a community facility space. After selecting a developer, we issued a mini bid for the environmental consulting firm to provide services, including preparation of an environmental review documentation pursuant to SECRA. So they were asked to review project materials, prepare a full environmental assessment form and preliminary analysis for all technical areas, provide a detailed analysis for open space, shadows, construction, greenhouse gas emissions, climate change, including consistency with CLCPA, assist in our consultation with the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation, which included preparation of a consultation submission via their Cultural Resources Information System, participation in meetings and calls with ESC, the developer, and other parties. And we did have as well a contingency task, which we didn't end up needing, which was to prepare an environmental impact statement. So sometimes on our scope, we might put in a contingency task just so the bidder is aware, if we get to this point, we might need you to do this. That way you're fully aware of what's expected, and we're fully aware of what you're offering. So the last example I'll talk about is our upstate feasibility study. So we identified 3 sites, Gowanda Correctional Facility, Mohawk Valley Psychiatric Center, and West Seneca Development Center as being fully or partially underutilized and thereby having surplus land that could be used for redevelopment. So we issued mini bids to firms on the pre-qualified list to help us evaluate different reuse options on these sites. The final study will serve as an action-oriented blueprint for the redevelopment of the sites and any potential RFPs that end up being issued as a result. And this study is actually wrapping up right now. So for each site, the consultant was asked to complete a land use and zoning analysis, including a summary table of pertinent zoning information, a survey of historical, environmental, cultural, and community resources, a site development feasibility study, including estimating building remediation costs, and a summary of infrastructure improvements needed to facilitate the redevelopment. They were asked to create conceptual redevelopment scenarios for each site in consultation with ESC, including market studies to support the proposed scenarios and a calculated assessment of necessary private investment for financial feasibility. They were also asked to help engage with local stakeholders and electeds for potential input on these redevelopment scenarios. So those are the four examples that I'm providing. ESC does a lot of work, but I don't want to go too long. So those are just 4 of the ways that we've used consultants. And just items of note, if a firm wants to respond to an RFP, a regular RFP that goes out, but is concerned because they worked on a mini bid that led to the preparation of that RFP, we've had some firms concerned about whether they would be eligible or not. So if there is a specific conflict of interest, you can submit a request to ESC, and the department will review those on a case-by-case basis. And again, just really reminding you, questions are due on Friday by 5 p.m. Please email this email address. If you have to hop off this webinar, please email this email address with any questions you have. We're also recording this webinar, and it will be posted on the RFQ website. So if you have a colleague who missed it and wants to watch, they'll be able to see it. And we're also taking down all the questions that are being asked, so we'll have them as well. So that's all that I have for now in the presentation. So Ethan, do we have any questions from any attendees?
Yeah, we have a couple. First question from an attendee asks, are we going to post the attendee list from this webinar? And if so, will that be shared? And where would that be shared?
We're not posting the attendee list from the webinar.
Great. So second question, just a quick clarifier. Looks like on the RFQ, the deadline says 2 p.m., but on this presentation, it says 5 p.m. Can we clarify that?
Yeah, I will double check. It should be 5 p.m., but I'll double check what's posted on our website. And if it says 2 p.m., then we'll do an addendum because everything is usually 5 p.m.
Great, great. So we have another question on, you may have already answered this. Will the Q&A be posted online or only submitted directly to firms who asked?
Yeah, the Q&A will be posted on our website. Questions are due on the 14th, and then we'll be posting those answers by the 28th.
Great. So we are having a lot of questions roll in, and we will get to everyone that we can answer, but give us some patience as we organize and parse through them. The next question coming up asks, if you're selected for the pre-qualified list, are you required to submit a response for subsequent mini RFPs, or is there any flexibility in not participating in mini bids going forward?
So firms are not required to submit responses. We're pre-qualifying firms based on their experience that we think, and their people that we think match what we might be looking for when we are looking for these services. But if we put out a mini bid and you either aren't interested or you don't have the capacity or whatever, you're not required to respond.
Great, great. Next question is an attendee asks, for firms that operate remotely or have flexible work arrangements, does the requirement for a New York State office necessitate a physical office space, or would a registered mailing address be acceptable?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. So we will, if you want, you can send that to that email address provided, or we'll talk to procurement and put that in the Q&A when that's distributed, because I'm not sure offhand the answer to that question.
Great. So I think that we're still having some more process related questions. Next one asks, are you conflicted from working on a project in a municipality if you are on an awarded consultant working in that area? I'm not sure. Maybe the person who asked that question can clarify, but Steph, if you want to take a stab at that.
I'm not sure about that. I would send that to the email address, and we'll add that to our Q&A that gets posted.
Great. So going forward, another attendee asks, so the fee proposal for a consultant is sometimes based on the type and scope of work that is being asked. So how do we submit a fee proposal if we don't know what the scope of work will be? I think that's relating to mini bids and how that all works.
So I'll just say that if you look at Appendix A, it just is asking for hourly staff time. You can, write if you want, this is our hourly staff time, with the caveat that, dependent on the scope of work when an actual bid comes out. But if you want further elaboration, submit that to the RE Prequal RFQ at esd.ny.gov.
Great. So another participant asks, if we submit for a category, for example, architecture and design, but don't provide all services within the bullets listed, for example, security analysis, is that acceptable? I think another mini bid related question.
Yeah, I would send that to the email address, but I think in general, it just depends on what we're looking for. If you're submitting and, when we're scoring, we feel like you meet the criteria on, the services, then you'd probably be, but offhand, it's a kind of, I guess, would depend. If you're responding to a mini bid, it would depend on the situation.
Great. So I think we're getting a couple of questions relating to just asking you to explain again whether you should apply as a team or looking for single firms only. We're having a couple of questions relating to that.
Sure.
if there is a group of MWBE firms, can they collaborate? How should they approach that?
So for this pre-qualification list, you can only apply as an individual firm. We're not looking for teams. You can say in your submission, you know, we provide this services and we plan on working with so-and-so to, you know, if any scopes of work come out that we can't fully handle, but the submission should come from each individual firm. So like, let's say if you say you're going to be working with other firms to form a team for a mini bid, perhaps each firm in that group should be applying individually.
Great, great. And is the are we shortlisting based on regions or based on expertise?
How many firms
For
would you
the
use?
mini bids, I guess both. You know, if we're doing a mini bid for a project in Erie County, we're probably, you know, going to look at firms that say they provide services in Erie County, and we're going to look at their areas of expertise and see if they match what we're looking for. That's why it's really important that you identify all regions that you operate in.
Thank you, Steph. I think we're also getting a couple of questions on asking us if there's going to be a limited number of firms selected for the pre-qualified list, or how many are we looking to get?
There's no limit. This is, you know, an open request for qualifications. We'll look at everybody's submissions and do the scoring, like I mentioned in the presentation. There's no like cap.
Great. And that also applies to, you know, the per category, as you mentioned, right?
Hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. Just getting some more questions here. Can you confirm how many firms receive mini bid invitations, and where possible, just give me 1 second to process this question. We are getting a lot, guys, and we will, I promise you, get to every single one.
And we're also, I'll just say we're, you know, recording this. We're going to take down all the questions and try to put them in that Q&A that we post. So if for some reason your question doesn't get answered, we have taken it down, and we'll put an answer in the Q&A that will get posted on the 28th.
Yeah. And I think that, so we're getting a couple of questions on this topic. How are firms selected for a mini bid? And when possible, do those go to MWBE firms, et cetera, SDVOB firms, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this in one of the beginning slides, but we're going to look at, you know, your cost proposal, your areas of expertise, your, you know, bios of who's on your team, your practice areas, where you're located, everything that you're putting in your submission for this procurement. So, you know, a strong submission will hopefully garner more inclusion on the mini bid, and just answering those questions that we're looking for. And we always include an MWBE or SDVOB on that list of firms that get the mini bid, assuming they're pre-qualified in those categories that we're looking for.
Wonderful. Question on the Creedmoor example. Did ESD reach out to several firms for all the tasks, or one firm who brought in each of the various sub-consultants? I think that's a good
Sure.
question.
I'll ask Delma if she can answer that.
Hi everybody. So that was before I'd gotten here. So I'm not totally sure. But as you mentioned before, it's totally acceptable for firms to sub things out that they either don't, you know, have the capacity, or who they think would augment the scope of the work. So for WXY specifically, on the planning, it was mostly WXY, but we had other consultants assisting on Creedmoor as well, like a community engagement consultant and others.
Great. Thank you, Dalma. One participant asks if they were to propose for a service such as cost estimating, do they need to be physically present in the region for them to be able to propose, in instances where it's possible to complete the work remotely?
That's a good question. I am not sure, honestly, offhand, so I would please email that question. My assumption would be as long as the work can get done, but if, there's something in a mini bid that says they need to be close to the site, I would assume that's a requirement, but it kind of depends. So please email that question to reprequal@esc.ny.gov.
Great. Another attendee asks, if a firm submits for a specific discipline that they can provide in-house, but they're not an MWBE firm, are they required to team up with an MWBE to achieve these stated goals?
That would depend on the mini bid. As I said, for this pre-qualified list that we're creating, this RFQ, you're only submitting as an individual firm. So whether you need to team up with other firms to meet MWBE goals will depend on that specific mini bid.
Great. Another question from earlier, is ESD going to share or can ESD share any data concerning amounts awarded under mini bids by the practice areas from the previous RFQ, the 2021 RFQ?
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think that we have that information in a format that would make sense to share. So I'm going to say probably not. But if you want to email that question, you can.
Okay. And another similar question, is it possible for ESD to release the previous pre-qualified list of consultants, the 2021 one, the full one?
Yeah, I don't believe that we can release that publicly. I'll double check and you can send that question. And I would just note regarding, the work, ESD's work ebbs and flows and priorities change over years. So, showing you what was done in the past 4 years isn't necessarily a good snapshot of what will be done in the next 4 years. So I would just keep that in mind. If you think, oh, it doesn't seem like ESD has done a lot of XYZ, that doesn't mean we won't be doing it on future projects. The work changes. So that's why we're looking for, as many firms as possible to respond.
Thank you. All right. Another attendee asks, if they meet some of the qualifications for a given practice area, but not all of them, can they still apply for that specific practice area? For example, energy sustainability, if their firm has experience in project planning and management, but not energy and daylight modeling, can they still apply for the energy and sustainability practice area?
Yeah, I would submit that question to the email address, but I would say probably it depends on the scoring, but I'm not 100% certain, so please submit that question to the email address.
Great. Next question asks, can you provide some examples of where we've needed community engagement expertise before?
Sure. Is Anna on yet by any chance?
She might not
We
be,
can
but I
hold
can
that.
answer that.
Okay, go for it, Joel.
Yeah. So I think Creedmoor is another example. There are a few, a number of really large state-owned sites, and there are certain instances in which we will want to work with communities to develop a planning vision for those sites prior to us pursuing any kind of RFPs or then down the line dispositions. So Creedmoor is an example where we did that, and throughout the state, as we have these large sites that we're looking at, there may be more.
Great, thanks, Joel.
Thank you, Joel. So I think we have some questions about partnering on mini bid submissions. Will the full pre-qualified list become available so that consultants will know what other firms are selected and what their services are in various areas in order to partner on mini bid submissions?
Yeah, I don't think that we publish it, but I'm not positive. So please send that email, that question to the email address, and we'll address it in the Q&A.
Great. And relatedly, if a firm responds to a mini bid, are they allowed to bring in subcontractors that are not also pre-qualified?
I would say yes, if that's who they're forming on their team. But again, that's a good question to send to the email address, and it'll be included in our Q&A.
Great. Got another MWBE SDVOB related question. If it's 15% MBE and 15% WBE minimum, could you meet the 30% requirement with 30% MBE? And is the 6% SDVOB in addition to the 30% MWBE requirement? Ask me if you need me to repeat that question.
Yeah, that's a question I think for the procurement email. I will say like goals are assigned by the Office of Contractor Supplier Diversity. So questions about meeting goals, we usually post to them. But if you send that to the email address, we can get them to weigh in.
Okay. And another question relating to being in a certain geographic area requirement to submit a proposal, but this one is relating to being in New York State. So the attendee asks, the RFQ notes that firms must have an office in the state, and is this a strict requirement if they have a history of doing work in the state but don't have a physical office there?
I'm not sure about that. So yeah, please send that to the email address because I don't know the answer offhand.
Great. Give me 1 second, guys. Yes, recording of this will be provided afterwards.
We posted on the RFQ website. So the place where you go to get the RFQ, that's where you'll find the recording as well.
Okay. For projects that require expertise across practice areas, for example, architecture, design, and community engagement, will firms on both lists receive invitations?
I think it depends on the mini bid, but we'll look at the list and categories and see what fits best with what we're looking for, and that's how we would decide who to send out to.
Great. Still parsing through this. These are great questions, guys. If a firm, next question asks, if a firm is going to sub out some of the tasks, do the sub-consultants also have to submit a proposal and be on the pre-qualified list? What if the sub is noted on the proposal but does not make it onto the pre-qualified list?
Yeah, I don't think this is for a mini bid, not for this RFQ, because as I mentioned, you're only applying as an individual firm. But I don't think that we require subs to be on the pre-qual list if a pre-qual firm is suggesting to use them in response to a mini bid. But please send that question to the procurement email so we can have a clearer answer for everybody. And that's another thing just to say, we appreciate the questions that are coming in, understanding you just got this presentation, so these are what's coming up. The reason that we really want people to send these to the email is because when we post the Q&A, the exact answer will be, discussed internally and make sure if our legal needs to weigh in on it, it'll be weighed in, and we'll provide as much clarity as possible. So, it'll be the same answer to everyone. It'll be as clear as possible when it's posted.
Thank you, Steph. More questions on mini bids. Are the mini bid RFPs available for reviewing online?
I don't believe we have those posted online. We have other RFPs posted online, but I don't think we post the mini bid ones because we're not posting them to the public. We're going to a select number of firms on this list that we're creating. But I will say, the examples that I gave, those scopes were pulled directly from those mini bids. That's where I pulled them from. So if you're wondering what you're going to be asked, that's exactly the language that's in those mini bids.
Okay. Another question relating to MWBE, SDVOB. Is it correct that MWBE and SDVOB utilization plans are required to be submitted in response to this RFQ, or are utilization plans only required in response to a future mini bid, or both?
So I would send that to the email just because I want to confirm with our procurement and OCSD staff on what the requirements are.
Great. And next question is, in terms of how this list is going to be utilized, are future projects anticipated to be limited to single sites, or does ESD anticipate seeking support from this list for statewide initiatives writ large?
I think that's to be determined. Like I said, we don't necessarily know exactly what the work will look like, 4 years out from now or 3 years out from now. We do have, for example, that upstate feasibility study. That's 3 different sites that we chose to include in one procurement, in one mini bid. So it will kind of depend on what work we have and what we think best serves that.
Great. We're nearing the end of questions, guys. Just cycling through to make sure that we've answered all of them, so bear with me.
And again, we've copied down all of the questions so that we know what's been asked, and we'll be able to include that in the Q&A.
Yeah, I think we got our last question here, Steph. If you do make it to the pre-qualified list, do you automatically receive mini bids, or is that at the discretion of ESD?
Yeah, that'll depend on what the scope is, what the practice area is, what the experiences of the firms that responded to this RFQ are. So it's not necessarily we pick every single firm that's in this one category. It kind of depends on what the mini bid is.
Great. Well, yeah, we've got still some more questions rolling in, so bear with us, and we're going to be very diligent. So an attendee asks, are there max billing rates for this assignment?
Like for the amount billed, or I think it's whatever.
I guess that would, job to
think
job.
Yeah, I think it depends, whatever staff you think would be working on any jobs that you got assigned, we'd want to see what their billing rates are. And it could be, principal, director, admin, that type of thing. But we don't have it, it depends.
Great. Another question, when vendors submit questions to the provided email address, are they going to have their emails receipt confirmed?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
When respondents submit questions to the email address that's been provided, will they get a receipt of confirmation?
I'll check with procurement. I'm not sure if they respond directly to let people know. I don't maintain that email address. Our procurement team does, again, because they are like the keeper of this procurement to make sure all the questions are responded to. So I'll double check with them.
Great. Last question that I can see now, but happy to stay as these roll in. How many staff bios should be included to their response to the RFQ?
I think that's whoever you anticipate working on bids that might come out, and that's up to the firm.
Okay. All right. And then we have another question that I may have missed, and they asked it again. How does ESD deal with rate escalation?
I think that's in Appendix A. It explains how you should respond and note any escalation. I believe it's in the appendix, so I would check that. But you can also send that question to RFQ@esd.ny.gov.
Okay, great. That's all the questions that I can see.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate your interest in, working with ESD. As I mentioned, the questions are due on Friday, and again, we have all of these, so we'll incorporate them into the Q&A. That'll be posted by the 28th of March, and then proposals are due the 25th of April, I believe. And we'll post this recording on the ESD website, so if you missed it or your colleagues missed it, you can go back and refer back to it. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good day.